They will call you queen as long as you breathe. They will fear you, hate you, curse you, as long as there's blood in your veins. But death, when it comes, always works the same way. It strips you of titles, memory, voice, scent, even your face. Your body decays slowly, watched over by indifferent servants and weary doctors, while the world outside your window hardly notices you're gone. But before you get comfortable, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments which city you're watching from and what time it is there. I'm really curious to see who's joined us. Now, settle in. We're about to begin. You wake up. You are 52 years old, although if you are honest with yourself, you stopped counting somewhere in your 40s. No one tells you their age after they have lost everything. What is age but another measure of what you have survived? The bed under you is hard as a bishop's stair. The woolen blanket, matted and ancient, is more a monument to lice than a comfort. There is a stone ceiling above you, low and unyielding, decorated only with cracks. You stare at those cracks. You do this every morning. Sometimes you even assign them names. The largest crack, Marie perhaps, branches right over your head. Like a warning, Marie will outlast you. So will the others. You try to stretch, but your body disagrees. There is a stiffness in your back that never goes away. Every morning you tell yourself that maybe today, just maybe, you will feel a little better. But today, like all the other days, you do not. Instead, there is a tightness in your chest. It is not new. It has been there for weeks, or maybe months. Time is slippery in these walls. You do not keep a calendar. The only clock is the slow progress of your own decay. You draw a breath. The air tastes like the inside of a grave, damp, sour, thick with the perfume of mold. For a moment, you consider that you might be dead already, and this is all just some elaborate afterlife prank. But you are not so lucky. Your body reminds you, with aches in the knees and a cough deep in your chest, that you are still here, still Margaret, still queen of nothing. In the silence, you hear the faint sound of rats. Their scratching is a lullaby if you are generous. More likely, it is a warning. Even in death, you will have company. You think of the great halls you once commanded, where your word was law and your enemies trembled. Now, the only creatures trembling at your voice are the mice in the wainscoting. You force yourself upright. The room spins just a little. Your head throbs. It is not the first time. Once, when you were young and full of plans, you would leap out of bed in silk and sunlight, already strategizing before the first meal. Now you move with the delicacy of an old statue. You have learned not to hurry. In the Middle Ages, hurrying is the quickest route to the grave, besides being born, being poor, or simply being a woman. You look around your chamber. Chamber is a generous word. It is really a cell, square, cold, unforgiving. The walls are thick stone, meant to keep out the world, or perhaps to keep you in. There is one small window, too high to see through, letting in a slice of dull gray daylight. You can tell the time of day by the position of that slice. Morning, the light barely touches the floor. By evening, it crawls up the opposite wall, then disappears altogether. That is the rhythm of your world now, not seasons, nor battles, nor the fevered plodding of courtiers, but the slow journey of a sunbeam. You have a pitcher of water and a single wooden cup. The pitcher is heavy, the water already stale. You remember when your breakfast table held silver pitchers, bowls of fruit, loaves of fine white bread. You remember the taste of fresh honey on new bread, of spiced wine, of laughter. There is no laughter here, only the sound of your own breathing, occasionally interrupted by a cough. You do not look in the mirror. There is no mirror, of course. Mirrors are for the living, or for those who still believe in their own beauty. You are neither. You touch your face and feel the lines there, the unfamiliar shape of your own jaw. Your hair is thinner than you remember. Your fingers, once elegant, are knobby and swollen at the joints. The skin is pale, nearly translucent, a map of blue veins and old regrets. It is cold, always cold. You wrap the blanket around yourself and shuffle to the little table. There is a crust of bread waiting, hard as a crusader's heart. You break off a piece. It tastes of dust and old flour. You chew slowly. There is no reason to hurry. Your teeth protest. Your gums bleed a little. That is just another thing you do not speak of. This is the beginning of your day, or the end. It is hard to tell. The days run together, a long gray smear. Sometimes you try to count them, but you always lose track. It is easier to focus on the sensations, the ache in your limbs, the taste of mold, the endless echoing silence. You are a queen, or you were. Now you are a prisoner of your own body and of a world that has moved on without you. You are Margaret of Anjou. You have survived war, loss, betrayal, and heartbreak. Now you face your greatest enemy, time, and the slow, creeping death that comes not with swords, but with coughs and aches and mornings like this one. You are still here, for now. You stare at your bread. This is the highlight of your morning, if one can call it a highlight. The bread is stale, a little gray at the edges, with a texture somewhere between stone and regret. You break off a piece and contemplate it, as though you might find something new. But no, it is the same as yesterday and the day before. You chew slowly, feeling the roughness scrape your gums. Each bite is a reminder of the teeth you have lost and the ones you are soon to lose. You wash the bread down with water. You try not to think about the last time the pitcher was cleaned or where the water truly came from. It tastes slightly metallic, a flavor you have come to associate with imprisonment and humility. You sip sparingly, as if rationing hope. After all, there is no guarantee the pitcher will be filled tomorrow. Sometimes they forget you, these faceless servants, these shadows in the hallway. Sometimes you suspect they remember you only because they like to watch you shrink like a flower in the shade. You once had breakfast served to you on silver platters, arranged by trembling hands desperate for your approval. The memory rises unbidden, the scent of fresh bread, the warmth of roasted meats, honeyed figs, all washed down with wine that glowed red as a ruby in the sunlight. You would have laughed then to think that a day might come when your meal would be a scrap of old crust and a cup of murky water. You wonder if anyone is laughing now, somewhere far from here. Breakfast is not merely a meal, it is an exercise in memory and in waiting. You sit at your wobbly table, chewing slowly, listening to your own breath. Each inhale is a struggle, tinged with a dry, persistent rasp in your chest. There is a faint sweetness to your cough, a heaviness behind your breastbone. You try not to dwell on it. If you counted every new ache, you would run out of numbers before you ran out of pain. You pick at the bread, tearing off pieces you know you will not eat. Old habits die last. Once, you would have given the scraps to your lapdog, a silly creature with more fur than sense. Now, the only animals are the mice you sometimes glimpse darting along the skirting board. You catch one's eye and it freezes. For a moment, you are two prisoners studying each other. You wonder which of you is closer to escape. After your meager breakfast, you move the cup aside and rest your arms on the table. You watch the window, where the sun is still reluctant to appear. You try to remember if you dreamed last night, but nothing comes. Sleep is rarely restful, and dreams rarely kind. You think instead of the people outside, on the other side of your wall. Do they eat breakfast? Do they complain about the taste? Are they grateful for anything at all? Or do they, like you, drift through their days on a tide of routine and resignation? You hear footsteps in the corridor and tense instinctively. After all these years, you still expect someone to come with news, good or bad, but at least sense something. But the footsteps pass by, and the silence returns, settling around you like dust. You realize you have been holding your breath and exhale slowly, as if this could dispel the anxiety that has taken root in your chest. It cannot. Anxiety is a constant companion. It sits with you at breakfast. It follows you to bed. You do not remember when it first arrived. Perhaps it was the night your son died, or the day your crown slipped from your fingers, or perhaps it was always there, waiting for you to slow down long enough to notice. In any case, it is here now, heavier than bread and sharper than thirst. You examine your hands, knuckles swollen, skin mottled. There are days when you can barely hold the cup, when your grip trembles so much that the water spills down your chin and onto your dress. You remember laughter at the court when you were young, laughter at clumsy old men who could not hold their wine. You wonder if they would laugh at you now. You look at the bread again. You consider saving a piece for later, as if there is a later. The thought is both comforting and absurd. Still, you wrap a bit in your handkerchief and place it beside your bed where you can see it. A gesture of hope or superstition or simply habit. Your breakfast is finished. You sit quietly, feeling the ache in your chest, the anxiety in your blood. Outside, the world moves on, indifferent to your hunger, your fear, your slow decline. You are alone, but not quite empty. There is always a little more to endure. You rise from the table and prepare for the next hour, the next day, the next piece of bread. This is how you survive, not by conquering or ruling or inspiring loyalty, but by sitting, chewing, waiting, and hoping that someone, somewhere, remembers that you are still here. Your day proceeds, as always, with little ceremony. The slice of sunlight on your wall has grown a little longer, and you, Margaret of Anjou, queen in name and invalid in practice, have finished your breakfast ritual. Now comes the part of the morning where you try to remember what it was like to be healthy. You almost succeed until you cough. The cough comes suddenly, and with it a scraping pain that claws its way up from somewhere deep in your chest. At first, it is dry and polite, like the knock of a servant too timid to interrupt. But soon it becomes insistent, sharp and relentless, rattling your frame as if to remind you that you are, in fact, still alive. You cover your mouth with a kerchief, trying to catch the sound, but there is no one left to disturb. You used to have a cough years ago after running in the cold as a child, or when the court was plagued by a winter chill. Those were innocent things, fleeting and easy to ignore. This cough is different. It lingers, it settles, it makes itself at home. It wakes you at night and greets you in the morning. Sometimes it brings blood, a bright red accusation on your handkerchief, and you wonder which is worse, the coughing itself or the evidence of your own slow decline. You notice, too, how much the cough steals from you. It takes your breath, leaving you gasping for air in the darkness. It takes your voice, so that when you speak, your words are hoarse and halting, your royal tone reduced to a whisper. In your prime, your voice could command armies. Now it barely commands your own lips. You remember days of argument and strategy, your words as sharp as blades, your laughter ringing off the walls of castles. Now, only the echo remains. The servants, when they come, pretend not to notice. Their eyes slide away from your shaking hands and your cracked lips. They bring you broths and infusions, as if these thin liquids could do more than comfort your stomach. You drink them, though, because you remember your manners, and because sometimes the heat is the only warmth you know. Once, someone brought you a sprig of rosemary, tied with a bit of ribbon, promising that it would clear your lungs. You pinned it to your pillow. The scent was strong and sharp, but the cough remained. Later, you found the sprig crumbled, the leaves brown, a tiny graveyard beside your head. Now you trust remedies as little as you trust promises. Every time you cough, a memory tries to push through. The memory of your father's illness, the long afternoons in dim rooms, his face sinking deeper into the pillow, the family speaking in whispers so as not to disturb the dying. You are not dying, Not yet. But the cough is a messenger. It reminds you that your world has shrunk to the size of this room, that your kingdom is now measured by the distance from bed to table. You become a student of your own body, noting every change. Your chest feels heavier with each passing day. Sometimes you feel as if you are carrying a stone under your ribs, a private and invisible burden. The cough comes in waves, sometimes soft and distant, like rain on the roof, sometimes violent, as if trying to turn you inside out. When it passes, you are left exhausted, heart pounding, vision blurry. You rest your head on your arms and wonder how many more days you have left to count coughs. You think of all the ways people die in this age: fever, childbirth, sword, famine. No one writes poems about dying of a cough. There is no glory in it, no audience, no songs, no tears. It is slow and mean and ordinary. You wonder if anyone will remember this, or if they will invent something more dramatic for the chronicles: a poisoned cup, a knife in the dark. You almost laugh, but the cough steals even that from you. You try sometimes to distract yourself. You watch the dust motes in the morning light. You listen for the sound of voices in the courtyard. You count your breaths in and out, as if this might hold your body together. But the cough is always waiting, a shadow in your chest, patient and sure. It has all the time in the world. There are moments in the afternoon when the fever rises and your thoughts drift. You imagine the cough as a companion, a creature that sits at your bedside, watching you with old, wise eyes. You wonder if it is waiting to carry you somewhere, or just to keep you company until the end. You whisper to it sometimes, bargaining for a little more time, a little less pain. The cough, of course, does not bargain, it simply stays. You wonder briefly what your enemies would think if they saw you now, conquered by something as small as a cough. Would they feel pity, triumph? Would they care at all? In this place, even hatred feels distant and pale. As the day wears on, you resign yourself. The cough is not leaving. It is your new friend, unwanted, uninvited, but steadfast. You will endure it as you have endured everything else. There is no other choice. This, then, is your life. Not battles or banquets, but the slow rhythm of coughing and breathing and waiting for the next symptom. You are Margaret of Anjou, and you are dying very, very slowly. Your day passes slowly, or rather, it limps. Pain is a loyal subject, one who never leaves your court, who never betrays your trust, who never, ever gives you a moment's peace. It begins in your wrists, which ache as you try to lift your cup. The ache spreads to your knuckles, your elbows, your knees. You had heard old women in your youth complain of the humors, of the shifting weather in their bones. You had laughed then. Now you understand deeply what it is to forecast rain not by the clouds, but by the stabbing in your hip. There is a peculiar democracy to pain. It does not care for royal blood or noble titles. It visits you as faithfully as it visits the poor, except that no one expects the queen to fetch her own bucket of water or chop her own wood. But pain demands that you acknowledge it, if only privately, if only in the grimace you make each time you rise from your bed. You notice the little things most. The twinge as you stretch out your fingers, the way your knees catch when you attempt to stand, the stiffness in your neck as you turn to glance at the window. You have become acquainted with every joint in your body. Each one has a voice, a particular complaint. Some whine, some groan, some, especially your hips, shout their protests so loudly that you feel you might cry out, if only you had the energy. Then there is the fever, which comes and goes like a thief. At first, it is a gentle heat, almost pleasant after the chill of your room. But then it rises, slow and implacable, and soon your skin is slick with sweat. Your nightgown clings to your back. The blankets you wrapped around yourself in the early hours are now a suffocating burden. You toss them aside, then shiver as the sweat cools. There is no comfort to be found. The fever brings with it a peculiar clarity. The world sharpens, edges glow. Every sensation is a little too bright, a little too loud. The scratch of your blanket is unbearable. The sound of a distant bell is a hammer in your skull. You close your eyes, but the light behind your lids is too white, too endless. You try to sleep, but your mind will not allow it. Thoughts dart and flash, memories rising unbidden. Sometimes you see faces, your son, your husband, courtiers long dead. Sometimes you hear voices, their words blurred as if spoken underwater. You know the stories, of course. The physicians with their theories, imbalance of the four humors, bad air, the will of God, a curse. They have names for every pain, but the names do nothing to lessen it. The remedies are worse. Poultices that stink of onions and garlic, infusions of bitter herbs that burn your tongue, hot cloths, cold compresses, the endless refrain of rest, 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 as if you have any choice but to rest, as if you could choose to be well. On the worst days, you wonder if the fever will simply burn you up, like a candle left too close to the fire. You imagine your soul evaporating, leaving behind only an empty shell, useless and still, but you do not die. You simply persist in a haze of heat and pain, drifting between moments of clarity and long stretches of confusion. Time ceases to have meaning. There is only before the fever and after. Pain makes you nostalgic. You remember, with sharp clarity, the first time you ever felt strong. You remember the way your limbs used to move without complaint, the way you could dance, ride, fight, shout, all in a single afternoon. You remember laughter, loud and joyful, in the gardens at court. Now your laughter would sound like a wheeze. You count the hours by the intensity of your aches. Morning, wrists and ankles, dull and persistent. Noon, knees and hips, stabbing, insistent. Evening, back and neck, as if someone has wedged stones beneath your skin. Night, everywhere, everywhere. A symphony of complaints. You try to ignore it, but pain is not shy. It will not be ignored. There are moments in the grip of fever when you almost welcome oblivion. Let it end, you think. Let it be done. But your body is stubborn, clinging to each breath, each beat of your tired heart. You are not ready, you tell yourself. You have endured worse. You are a queen. You will endure this too. You close your eyes and try to recall the names of every joint in your body. You find you know them all by heart now. Familiar friends, bitter enemies. You trace the path of pain from fingertips to toes, a map written in aches. Perhaps you think there is dignity in surviving this, or perhaps there is only endurance. Your world has narrowed to a single, ongoing chronicle: pain, fever, pain, fever, pain. You do not expect it to change. You do not pray for miracles. You simply breathe and wait for the next day and the next ache. You are Margaret of Anjou, queen of nothing, ruler of your own suffering, and still, somehow, you persist. You lie in bed, fever lingering just beneath your skin, joints aching like old doors in a forgotten wing of the palace. Your body is heavy, but your mind drifts. Pain, you discover, is an excellent key to the past. Every twinge and shiver unlocks another memory, another room in the grand, echoing halls of your life. So you let yourself go backwards against the current of decline until you reach that one morning nearly 40 years ago when the world spun around you not because of illness, but because of glory. You were young then, 17, or nearly so. They said you were beautiful, though you never trusted mirrors or flattery. You wore silk and crimson, the colors of a new dynasty, and your hair was brushed until it shone like a banner in the sun. The air was thick with the scent of roses and horse sweat, and all of London buzzed for your arrival. They did not yet know you, this French girl, but they would. They would learn your voice, your temper, your name. You remember the procession, slow and grand, the golden carriage rattling over cobblestones, the faces pressed against windows and doorways. They shouted your name, though many of them mispronounced it. Margaret, Marguerite, Maud. What did it matter? You were the queen, and that day you belonged to all of them. Inside the abbey, the air was cool and heavy, thick with incense and expectation. The walls soared upward, more stone than sky. As you walked beneath their shadow, you felt small and endless at the same time. It was not humility, not exactly, more the sense that you were becoming something new, something enormous. You were no longer just yourself, you were a symbol, a vessel for hopes and curses and ancient promises. They dressed you in layers of cloth so fine that it seemed impossible any mortal hands had woven it. Jewels pressed cold against your throat. Your hands were gloved in white, but even so, you felt the trembling in your fingers. Not fear exactly, anticipation, a kind of hunger. The crown was heavy, heavier than you expected, heavier, perhaps, than anyone could truly bear. There were so many faces, bishops and lords and old women who came for the spectacle, not for you. Your future husband, Henry, looked as though he might faint from the weight of his own robes. Even then, you saw the softness in him, the uncertainty, the shadows gathering at the edges of his eyes. You told yourself you could be his strength. You were wrong, but only time could teach you that. The ceremony was endless, a litany of prayers, oaths, and questions you did not truly understand. You spoke the words as instructed, careful not to stumble. You felt each moment pressed into the flesh of your memory, knowing that history would record your every move, even if it got your heart wrong. The oil was cold on your forehead. The ring slipped onto your finger, too loose by half. And then suddenly it was done. The archbishop lifted the crown high and then brought it down upon your brow. It was not pain you felt, but pressure, a weight like no other. The gold was real, the jewels unyielding. You had to stand straighter just to keep it from slipping. In that moment, you felt as if you might rise through the roof, like incense disappearing into legend. There was applause, restrained and mannered. Somewhere, a choir sang. You tried to memorize the notes, the light, the faces, knowing even then that memory is a fickle thing, always rewriting itself. You want to linger here, in this memory. Here you are not a shivering woman on a narrow bed. You are radiant. The silk is soft. The air is full of promise. Your mother is not yet dead. Your father is not yet mad. Your husband is not yet broken. Your son not yet lost. You are queen, not of nothing, but of everything. But memory is cruel. It does not let you stay. The vision flickers. The crown grows heavier, pressing into your skull until it almost hurts. The faces blur. The voices fade. You remember the end of the day, the aching feet, the dull pain behind your eyes, the slow, creeping exhaustion. Even at your brightest, even at the peak of triumph, fatigue was waiting for you, patient and inevitable. You remember, too, the secret relief as you slipped out of your regalia, your scalp tingling where the crown had pressed. The weight did not disappear, it only moved, settling somewhere invisible just beneath your skin, where it would stay for the rest of your life. You blink, and you are back in the present. The blanket is scratchy, your body aches, and the cough is a dull growl in your chest. But for a few moments, you were someone else, someone with the world at her feet, not just the rats. You lie still, letting the memory settle around you like old perfume. Triumph, you have learned, is as fleeting as health. But even as the day drags on, even as pain reasserts itself, you know that once you were a queen, and in your mind at least, the crown still fits. The memory of silk fades as quickly as your body's warmth. You are brought back, as always, by pain, by the reality of your cramped cell and the sound of your own breathing. To A, however, there is something else. You hear footsteps, careful, practiced, and, if you are not mistaken, a little theatrical. They pause outside your door, shuffling, as if their owner is rehearsing an entrance. You sigh. You know what comes next. The morning ritual of medical intervention, that blend of hope and farce. The door opens, and in steps your doctor. At least, that is what he calls himself. Physician, he says, always with a flourish, as though the title might conjure health from thin air. In truth, you suspect he is more charlatan than savior, though the distinction is academic. He is not the first. You have seen many men parade through your sick room, some with university learning, some with nothing but superstition and a strong stomach for unpleasant fluids. Their approaches differ, but their results are the same. You remain ill, and they remain employed. Today's visitor is thin, angular, draped in robes that were once fine, but are now worn shiny at the elbows and cuffs. His cap sits at a jaunty angle, as if defying the laws of gravity and decorum alike. He carries a pouch of tools, knives, spoons, glass vials, herbs so dry they rattle when he moves. Most impressive of all, he carries confidence. It fills the room, makes the shadows retreat. He bows deeply. Majesty, he intones, as if addressing a whole court rather than a single sick woman. You nod, resigned. You have little energy for performance. He sets to work with all the gravity of a priest. First, the questions. How did you sleep? Poorly. Have you eaten? Reluctantly. How is your pain? Present, as always. He examines you, prods your wrists, peers into your mouth, taps at your chest, and listens to the rattle that has settled there like an unwelcome tenant. He clucks his tongue, a sound you have come to despise. It means nothing, but it gives the illusion of action. Next comes the show. He unwraps a bundle of dried plants and begins to prepare a brew. The scent fills the room, sharp, earthy, untrustworthy. This will draw out the poison, he promises, as if your sickness is merely a rebellious spirit that can be coaxed into leaving. You swallow the bitter concoction because it is expected of you. The taste is so foul you nearly retch. He smiles, as if the more unpleasant the medicine, the more effective it must be. Then come the other remedies. A compress for your forehead, cool and damp, meant to balance the humors. You are reminded yet again that your flesh is little more than a battlefield for invisible fluids. Yellow bile, black bile, phlegm, blood. No matter how many times he explains this, you remain unconvinced. Your body does not feel like a set of 4 jars. It feels like a single, failing animal. Today, the doctor brings out his leeches. He explains in excruciating detail how their application will draw out the bad blood and restore your vigor. You have lost track of how much blood you have given to science, to medicine, to quackery. Each time you hope, privately, that perhaps this time you might simply bleed out and be done with it. But no, you persist, paler but no better. The leeches at least seem satisfied. Once the leeching is done, he prescribes rest. his solution to everything. Rest, Majesty, and all will be well. You would laugh, but you are tired, and your throat is raw. He packs away his tools, his vials, his airs of certainty. He bows again, deep and unnecessary, and glides from the room, the performance complete. You are left with the aftermath, the stinging at your wrists where the leeches clung, the bitterness at the back of your tongue, the strange metallic taste in your mouth. You sip stale water and lie back, wondering how much of this is tradition, how much is genuine belief, and how much is simply a man making a living from your suffering. You think of the other doctors who have passed through your life, the herbalists with their bundles of rosemary and sage, the priests with their holy water, the midwives with their soft hands and sad eyes. Each brought a different promise, a different recipe for healing. All failed. You have come to the conclusion that your body is less a puzzle to be solved and more a punishment to be endured. You wonder briefly what would happen if you refused all intervention. Would you die faster or simply drift on, one failed remedy after another, until the world forgot you altogether? There is no answer, only the slow, steady tick of pain and the knowledge that, for the sick in this world, hope is just another commodity, bought, sold, and inevitably disappointed. You turn on your side, gaze at the window. Outside, life continues. The world spins, healthy and indifferent. Inside, you wait for the next visit, the next potion, the next little drama in the long, boring tragedy of your decline. You are Margaret of Anjou. They call you Majesty, but you suspect the leeches are the only ones who truly profit from your title now. The doctor is gone. You are alone again with your body and your thoughts. You wonder which is the more dangerous company. If the four humors truly govern the human animal, today yours are governed entirely by black bile, melancholy, they call it. In your world, there are endless names for sadness, but none that quite capture the flavor of what you feel now. Not grief, not simple fear, but a thick, choking dread that pools in your gut and winds itself through your limbs. You have known sorrow before. It was there in the shadows on your wedding night, in the tremble of your husband's hand, in the wails that echoed through empty nurseries and cold halls. But this is something different. This is not the sudden knife of loss, nor the dull ache of memory. This is a kind of slow poisoning, a creeping certainty that nothing will ever be right again, and perhaps never truly was. It sits in your stomach, this dread. Sometimes it clenches so tightly that you cannot eat, cannot drink, can barely swallow even water. Sometimes it climbs higher, pressing on your chest, making your heart flutter with cold, frantic wings. The doctor calls it a humor imbalance, as if your body is a leaky barrel and someone simply poured too much sorrow into the mix. You wish it were so simple. You wish he could bleed the dread out as easily as he bleeds your veins. You try, as you always do, to reason with your own mind. You remind yourself that you have survived worse. that you have endured battlefields, betrayals, and the slow erasure of everything you once called yours. But reason is a poor weapon against this kind of foe. The dread is patient. It waits out every argument. When you force yourself to remember happier times, it only whispers that those moments were fleeting, illusions that make your present misery seem all the more complete. Sometimes you pray. You do not pray for healing. Such prayers feel childish, even to someone who has lost everything. Instead, you pray for peace, for a single day without the gnawing sense of doom, for a moment when your thoughts might be your own again, unshadowed by the certainty of failure. The prayers feel as heavy as your limbs. You suspect they rise no higher than the ceiling before settling back down on your chest. The dread infects everything. Your dreams, when they come, are feverish and dark. You see faces you do not wish to see, your father's, wild with illness, your husband's, pale and lost, your son's, bloodied and gone. Sometimes you wake with tears on your cheeks, the taste of fear thick on your tongue. You do not speak of it to the servants. Let them think the queen is as unbreakable as legend demands. Each day you look for signs of hope, but find none. The bread is still stale, the water still sour. The doctor's visits blur together, a parade of false assurances and foul smelling remedies. You cling to the little things, a ray of sunlight through the window, the way the dust motes dance, the brief warmth of a remembered laugh. These are not enough, but you take them, greedy as a miser. You notice your body more now, every spasm and cramp, every strange ache and flutter. You lie awake at night, cataloging symptoms, as though knowing them will grant you some measure of control. You trace the line of pain from your chest to your stomach, from your head to your fingertips, a scholar of your own decline. The dread tells you this is all there is left, this endless waiting, this slow undoing. Sometimes, for a moment, you catch yourself in a strange sort of hope. Perhaps tomorrow will be better. Perhaps you will wake without pain, without dread, and the world will have shifted imperceptibly toward mercy. But the hope never lasts. It is devoured by the black bile, by the heaviness inside you that no doctor, no priest, no prayer can move. You think about your soul, what will become of it. You wonder if the dread will follow you into whatever comes next, or if it will finally loosen its grip when you leave this body behind. The priests say suffering brings you closer to God, but you have your doubts. It only seems to bring you closer to the truth that life, for most, is a long lesson in disappointment. Still, you endure because you must, because you have always done so. You endure because even now, some stubborn thread in you refuses to let go, refuses to surrender entirely to the darkness. The black bile is strong, but you are still here. Your breath is shallow, your spirit worn, but you are still here. You are Margaret of Anjou, queen in name, captive in spirit, unwilling pupil of dread. Tomorrow will come, as it always does, and you will greet it, as always, with the particular courage of the condemned, a deep breath, a heavy heart, and the quiet, unspoken hope that maybe, just maybe, this day will be different. If there is one certainty in your failing world, it is that no pain, no sorrow, no malady is ever allowed to simply exist. No, each discomfort must be chased down, named, and purged through a carnival of rituals and beliefs that grow more elaborate with every passing week of your decline. Today, as your fever seeps through the linen and your joints grind like old hinges, your keepers announce a new campaign against your body, a siege of superstition and procedure, half medicine, half magic, all misery. It begins, as always, with a visit from the priest. He arrives at your bedside armed with a vial of holy water, a clutch of relics, and an expression of grave, hopeful expectation. He speaks softly, as though afraid your illness might be contagious to the soul. Prayers are muttered, Latin and desperation woven together. You are not sure what is supposed to be exorcised, the sickness, your doubt, or your lingering authority. At one point, he presses a splinter of some saint's bone to your forehead. You try not to laugh at the tickle, it would only make your cough worse. As soon as he leaves, the servants bring in their own arsenal of cures. The first is smoke, bundles of dried herbs, set smoldering in a small pan until your room is thick with bitter, choking fumes. To drive out evil spirits, one explains, fanning the smoke in your direction as if this invisible malice will exit your lungs, trailing a faint scent of thyme. The smoke stings your eyes. Your cough is unimpressed. It redoubles its efforts, hacking with special fervor. Next come the charms. Your nurse, whose hands are as dry as the herb she ties, fastens a ribbon around your wrist. It is red to ward off the evil eye. There are knots tied in secret patterns, whispered over as if each one is a lock on the door of death. She slips a silver coin beneath your pillow, another weapon against nightmares and night sweats. You let her, mostly out of habit, and partly because it is easier to humor the living than argue with the dead. The physician, never content to be upstaged by mere superstition, returns with his latest procedures. Bloodletting is his favorite, an art and a ritual. The bowl is set at your side, the vein found, the incision neat. Blood flows, dark and sluggish, pooling like all the dignity you have lost. He watches closely, as though expecting to see the very essence of sickness swirl in the basin. When he finally declares enough, you are dizzy, your ears ringing with a private chorus. The physician's apprentice holds up the bowl, as if searching for omens. In the dark liquid, you half expect him to read your future there. Spoiler, more pain. Then there are the pouches of herbs, tied around your neck, pungent and weighty, promising to purify the air you breathe. The servants scatter dried rosemary and lavender beneath your bed, muttering about sweet airs and keeping away miasma. Once, someone suggested hanging garlic on the door. You refused, not out of skepticism, but out of pity for your own nose. No day is complete without a ritual bath, tepid and embarrassing, in which you are lowered like an offering into water tinged green by floating leaves. The nurse scrubs at your skin with a rough cloth, intent on driving out bad humors. When you emerge shivering, she whispers an old rhyme against fever. You pretend not to hear. You are not sure whether the rhyme is meant for you or for her own trembling peace of mind. The worst, perhaps, are the leeches, not for the pain. They are hardly more distressing than a persistent fly, but for the ritual that surrounds them. Each application is preceded by a lecture about the balance of fluids, followed by a prayer, and then a hopeful pause, as if you might leap up, instantly healed. Instead, you watch the little creatures engorge themselves, growing fat and lazy. It is, you suppose, the only prosperity left in your chambers. Occasionally, someone suggests a pilgrimage, a long journey to some distant shrine to beg a miracle from the bones of a more fortunate martyr. You imagine yourself bundled in blankets, rattling over muddy roads, your body shaken to pieces in pursuit of a legend. You decline, pointing out, without much irony, that if miracles were so easy to come by, the world would be empty of both kings and beggars. All of these efforts, you suspect, are not truly for your benefit. They are for the comfort of those around you. Rituals give them something to do, something to believe, a reason to hope that your fate is not already sealed. Perhaps you think this is the true purpose of superstition, not to heal the sick, but to distract the healthy from their own helplessness. As evening falls, the smoke fades, the ribbons slip, the relics are tucked away. Your body is as weak as ever, your mind is restless, your cough still rattling in your chest. You lie still, surrounded by the evidence of every effort made on your behalf, the charms and stains and lingering stench. You have played your part in the ancient drama, submitted to every superstition and procedure. Tomorrow, you know, the show will begin again. You are Margaret of Anjou. You have been blessed, smoked, bled, and charmed. Still, the only spirits that linger are your own ghosts, whispering that not every ritual can keep the darkness at bay. The smoke from last night's herbs still clings to your blankets, mingling with the odor of sweat and sickness. You wake to the soft gray of another morning, a faint light seeping in through the small high window. Today, your body feels hollow, like an abandoned church. The only sign of life within you is the persistent ache in your chest and the dull throb in your bones. You turn your head slowly toward the window. This, you have learned, is the closest thing to escape you are permitted. The stone is cold beneath your cheek. For a moment, your vision blurs. It takes a few breaths, shallow and careful, before the outside world comes into focus. It is always the same scene, a narrow strip of sky, sometimes blue, more often the color of dirty linen. A sliver of street below, muddy and alive. In your youth, you would have dismissed such a view as pitiful, unworthy of a queen. Now, it is your entire horizon. The world out there continues at its own pace, indifferent to the sickness that festers in this cold room. You watch as a baker's boy, no older than your son once was, trots past balancing a basket on his hip. Behind him, a woman in a patched dress drags a bucket of water, her back already bent by years of labor. A pair of dogs chase each other, their barks rising in the air, joyous and free. None of them glance upward. Why would they? There is nothing for them to see in this window. You are a ghost to them, a rumor, a faded story whose ending they barely remember. Sometimes you imagine calling out just to see if your voice would reach them. What would you say? I was a queen once. I was feared, beloved, envied. I made war, I made peace, I made enemies, and I made history. But you say nothing. You have learned the cost of wasted breath. The seasons shift outside your window in small, stubborn ways. You have watched the muddy street harden with frost, then soften again under the spring rain. You have counted the leaves as they appeared on the lone tree at the corner, pale and trembling, then watched them fall, one by one, their gold turning to brown in the gutter. Life out there is relentless. It renews itself with a quiet arrogance, never asking permission. You remember what it was to be part of that life. You remember riding through the streets, banners flying, crowds pressing in to catch a glimpse of you. You remember the roar of the city during feasts and coronations, the heavy scent of roasting meat, the sting of rosewater sprinkled in your path. Now, all that remains is the thin scent of must and mildew and the faded colors of your memories. The people below argue and laugh and work. Their troubles are ordinary and endless: bread, money, children, the price of salt, the rumor of a new tax. You watch their struggles with a kind of envy. You would give anything for a day filled with small, solvable worries. But illness is greedy. It takes not only your body, but the very shape of your days. Once, a fight broke out in the street, a true spectacle, all elbows and curses. For a moment, everyone stopped, even the chickens. You strained to hear the words, eager for any distraction. But the combatants tired quickly, shaking fists and returning to their chores. It was the highlight of your week. At times, a procession passes, a wedding, a funeral, a visiting dignitary whose name you never learn. You watch as the living honor the newly dead, their voices carrying songs and prayers you once led yourself. You wonder who will walk in your own procession. Will they sing for you, or will they whisper that the mad queen is finally gone? Every morning, the world outside your window insists on its own purpose. It will not pause for your suffering. Children are born, dogs are kicked, lovers quarrel, bread is baked and eaten and forgotten. The rhythm never changes, not for a day, not for a queen. It is both comfort and insult, the proof that your absence will not end the world, nor even delay it. Sometimes, in the deepest dusk, you catch a glimpse of the evening star rising over the rooftops. You used to wish upon such stars. Now you simply watch, counting the days, marking time by light and shadow and the quiet, stubborn continuity of life outside. You are Margaret of Anjou. You once commanded armies, altered dynasties, and shaped the fate of kingdoms. Now you are an audience of one, staring through a window as the world keeps going, stubbornly, beautifully, without you. You are not used to visitors anymore. The sick room is an awkward country, its borders marked by silence and the faint, metallic smell of decline. Yet, sometimes, the world insists on intrusion. News travels through cracks in the stone. Faces from your past materialize like ghosts, bearing gifts you do not want and news you did not request. It begins, as it often does, with the slow creak of the door and the uncertain shuffle of slippers on flagstones. Your nurse has a peculiar way of announcing guests, a nervous clearing of the throat, a glance as if to check you are still presentable for the world. Today, it is a woman from court, once a friend, now a faded acquaintance, wrapped in layers of black that swallow the shape of her body. She carries a pouch of rose petals and a head full of stories. She sits at your bedside, eyes darting from your face to the shadowed corners of the room. Everyone is talking, she begins, not even trying to hide the hunger for drama in her voice. You smile, thin as parchment. Let them talk. What else is there to do in this world but gossip about those whose stories are almost over? She brings tales of war, rebellion, and royal mishaps, names that once made you tremble, now only half familiar syllables. She describes a skirmish in the north, a new tax in the south, a scandal in the palace kitchens that involves more flour than sense. You nod at the right places, marveling at the ability of the living to manufacture excitement from the most ordinary dust. Sometimes you envy them. Their days are still shaped by what might happen rather than what has already been lost. Others follow, an old confessor who comes to see whether your soul is, as they say, in order. He speaks in soft Latin, his fingers worrying the beads of his rosary. He asks about repentance, about the state of your faith. You listen politely, offering answers that are vague enough to satisfy, but do not expose your private doubts. In truth, your belief is a threadbare garment, useful for warmth, inadequate for protection. He leaves you with a blessing, as if words alone could stitch up the holes in your soul. A cousin appears, eyes red rimmed, carrying a book of psalms and a list of names you barely remember. She talks more to herself than to you, reading prayers that tangle in her throat. You realize she is practicing grief in advance, rehearsing for the day when you are truly gone. It is a strange thing to watch others prepare for your absence, as if your death is a social event with invitations and seating charts. Then come the servants, young, old, some you recognize, others you do not. They linger at your door, peering in as if you are a curiosity, a relic of a time they have only heard about in kitchen stories. You try to greet them with dignity, but it is hard to look queenly when your blanket slips and your hair is matted to your scalp. They bow quickly and disappear giggling in the hallway. Each visit brings news. Some of it is true, most of it embroidered in the telling. You hear that the king in France has fallen ill, that the new regent is a child, that the price of salt is high and winter will be long. There is a rumor that your cousin in Anjou has remarried, that your old enemy has died of a swollen throat, that the city is preparing for some festival you cannot even name. You collect these stories, tucking them away like faded love letters, reminders that the world outside is still alive, still inventing its own importance. It is hard not to feel invisible during these visits. Harder still when you realize that for some, your room is a place for final farewells. They speak to you gently, as if your bones are glass. Some look at you with pity, some with relief, a few with a nervous hope that your passing will smooth their own path to power. You learn to recognize the difference, the true sadness in the set of a mouth, the calculation in a glance, the impatience in a hand that fidgets with rosary beads. Farewells take many forms: a whispered blessing, a clumsy kiss on the forehead, a promise to pray for you at some distant shrine. They leave behind tokens, flowers that wilt before dusk, a silk ribbon, a handkerchief damp with tears, or sometimes only with duty. You thank them all. You have learned that dignity is the last possession a queen may keep. When the door closes and you are alone again, the silence feels heavier, as if the air itself is thickening in anticipation of the end. You lie still, listening to the echo of other people's lives moving on, their voices growing fainter with every visit. You are a chapter they are already closing, a rumor that soon will need no telling. You are Margaret of Anjou. You receive visitors as a courtesy, a custom, a way to mark time as it slips through your thin fingers. Their news is always about the living, but your story, is now only about farewells. Night comes to your chamber with all the subtlety of a thief. Shadows lengthen, swallowing what little warmth the day gave you. The candle on your table flickers in the draught, casting quivering shapes onto the walls. You tell yourself that sleep will come, that your body will at last be allowed a few hours' escape from pain. But sleep is an unreliable friend in your sick room. Tonight, as on so many nights before, it betrays you completely. Instead, you lie awake, your body a battleground of aches and fever. The air feels thick and sour, every breath scraping the inside of your throat. Your limbs ache, your joints burn, your cough rasps quietly in the dark. The old blanket that was once a small comfort now suffocates you. When you throw it off, the cold cuts into your bones. You are forever shifting, twisting, bargaining for a moment of ease that never arrives. At first, the hours crawl. You count them by the sound of distant bells. A quarter past midnight, a half past one, each interval a small defeat. Outside, the street dogs bark at ghosts, their yelps sharp as needles. Somewhere a drunken voice drifts up from a tavern, singing nonsense verses to the indifferent stars. You try to focus on these noises, to use them as a lifeline to the world of the living, but they fade quickly, leaving you alone with the relentless ticking of your heart. As the fever builds, reality begins to shift at the edges. The shadows on the wall grow bolder, moving even when the candle does not flicker. You see faces there, pale and unblinking. Sometimes they are people you remember. Your father, wild eyed with prophecy. Your mother, beautiful and silent. Your lost son, forever 7 years old. Sometimes they are strangers, watching you with the cool detachment of the dead. You know logically that these are just tricks of exhaustion and illness, but that knowledge does nothing to quiet your mind. Each hallucination feels both real and inevitable, as if the veil between worlds is thinner here in this dim little cell. Once you see a white dog sitting at the foot of your bed. Its eyes are kind, but when you reach for it, your hand closes on empty air. Another time, you swear the old abbess, long dead, sits by your side, muttering prayers in a voice like dry leaves. You stop trying to reason with your mind. You let the visions come. Some are gentle, childhood fields, bright with poppies, the laughter of friends long lost. Others are darker, soldiers bleeding into muddy earth, your own hands slick with guilt, the sound of a crowd baying for blood. Sometimes the walls themselves seem to pulse, breathing in time with your feverish heartbeat. The worst are the nights when you cannot tell if you are awake or dreaming. You feel yourself slipping, losing the thread of who and where you are. Did you really hear footsteps in the hall? Did someone just call your name, or was it only the wind? You lie very still, afraid that if you move, you will fall right out of your body, leaving it behind like a soiled dress. In these hours, time ceases to exist. There is only the endless present, an ocean of darkness broken by occasional flashes of memory or pain. You try to recall prayers, old hymns, anything to anchor yourself. The words come half remembered, looping over and over until they become meaningless. You mouth them silently, hoping for comfort, but they offer only the rhythm of repetition. Sometimes, when dawn is very far away, you think you hear your mother's lullaby, a tune so gentle you want to weep for the distance between then and now. Other times you hear your enemies, the jeers of a London mob, the hiss of courtly betrayal, the low, cruel laughter of those who wrote your fate in ledgers and letters. Their voices curl around you, sticky and impossible to shake. Your body craves rest, but your mind will not allow it. You watch the pale light creeping up the far wall, a slow and silent progress. You mark the time by the lengthening shapes on the ceiling, by the cooling sweat on your forehead. When you finally doze, it is never for long, a shallow, haunted sleep from which you wake, gasping, unsure if you are still in this world or some other. The servants come at dawn, their faces drawn with their own exhaustion, their hands gentle but distant. They straighten your bed, refill your water, murmur platitudes about the day ahead. You thank them, your voice rough from disuse. You know they see the shadows beneath your eyes, the way your hands tremble. They pretend not to notice. You pretend you slept well. This is how night passes now, not as a respite, but as another test to be endured. You survive each sleepless stretch as you have survived all else, with a stubborn, silent defiance. There is no comfort in the knowledge, only the hollow satisfaction of endurance. You are Margaret of Anjou. You face your demons with open eyes and a feverish mind, queen of a night that never quite ends. There are many ways to measure your decline. You have counted the pains in your joints, the stains on your handkerchief, the sleepless hours, the visitor's sighs. But there is another chronicle, a quieter, more humiliating one. The scents that now fill your sick room, marking you out as something other than living, other than clean. The day begins, as so many do, with the faint tang of sour sweat seeping from your nightclothes and sheets. Even the most diligent servants cannot quite erase it. The scent clings to your skin, heavy and persistent, a reminder that your body is working, always working, against you. Once, your chamber was perfumed with rose water and fresh linens. Now, it is haunted by reminders of the flesh's slow surrender. You catch other smells, too. The lingering sharpness of last night's herbal smoke, never quite cleared by the morning breeze. The bitter undertone of fever, metallic and unnatural, rising from your breath and settling on your tongue. Sometimes, when the fever is high, you become convinced that the entire room is decaying, that you are rotting in place, bit by bit, as if already in the ground. The chamber pot, carefully tended by servants, is never empty for long. Its odor is masked with herbs, lavender, rosemary, even the odd orange peel filched from the kitchen, but these only mingle with the underlying truth. You grow acutely aware of every function, every failure, every sour note. Your body, once the polished tool of a queen, now behaves like that of any other old woman, weak, unpredictable, embarrassing. There is the persistent mustiness of damp stone, the breath of centuries caught in the walls. In winter, it is almost pleasant, reminding you of cold cellars and quiet corridors, childhood games played out of sight of tutors and courtiers. In summer, the air thickens, sticky and close. You taste it on your lips, earth, sweat, old wood, 1,000 years of dust. The servants do their best. They bring in bowls of dried petals, scatter sweet herbs on the floor, open the window when the weather allows. They scrub your sheets, change your bandages, and whisper apologies for every discomfort. Yet nothing disguises the scent of illness. It is a perfume that declares itself with every shallow breath, every cough, every damp patch on your pillow. Occasionally, someone brings a posy, lilies, violets, sometimes sprigs of fresh mint. You inhale deeply, grateful for even a moment's respite. The sweetness is almost painful, so sharp is the contrast with your usual atmosphere. You wonder if the flowers are meant for you or for your nurses, an offering to keep despair at bay. You remember, with a mixture of fondness and contempt, the elaborate rituals of scent from your days at court. The anointing with precious oils, the burning of incense, the endless hunt for the rarest perfumes. These were the badges of the living, the markers of power and pleasure. You realize now that those rituals were less about delight and more about denial, a frantic covering up of the body's inevitable betrayals. Sometimes, when the air is thickest, you find yourself longing for rain, for the wild, clean scent of a storm breaking over fields and rivers. You imagine yourself as a girl again, running in the wet grass, the wind driving all trace of civilization from your skin. You would come home drenched, your nurse clucking, your cheeks flushed with honest, healthy exertion. The memory is so vivid, you almost believe it, until another cough brings you back. At night, the odors are stronger. With the windows closed against the chill, the room becomes a closed vessel, steeped in its own history. Your fever dreams are scented with a sourness you cannot name. Even your prayers seem to cling to the heavy air, weighed down by the smells of decline. Worst of all is the moment, sometimes in the small hours, when you realize that you yourself have become strange to your own senses. There is a foreignness to your skin, a discomfort in your own body that cannot be washed away. You think, not without irony, that this is how the dying announce themselves, not with cries or visions, but with the slow, quiet conquest of scent. Yet even here, you find yourself enduring. You draw each breath, shallow as it may be, and remind yourself that you are still alive. You are Margaret of Anjou. You have lived long enough to see your body become a landscape of strange and changing odors, a map written in sweat and sickness and memory. The world outside may turn away, but you remain, breathing in the truth of your own decline. Eventually, when the smell of decline grows undeniable and your cough reverberates down the corridors, someone decides it is time to call the priest. The decision is made quietly, as all such decisions are. You hear it in the hurried steps, the low voices at your door, the sudden burst of activity, as if your immortal soul might yet be coaxed into compliance by a little more linen, a little more lavender. The priest arrives at dusk, just as the light begins to drain from your chamber. He is old, perhaps even older than you, with knuckles like twisted branches and a slow, deliberate manner. He carries the tools of his trade: oil, wafers, a heavy book, and of course the calm certainty of a man whose trade is the end of things. He smells faintly of wine and candle wax, the perfume of 100 confessions before yours. He sits by your bed, and you try not to resent his presence. Once you might have bristled at the implication that your end is close, that your words must be sorted and tallied before the tally is taken for good. Now you find you do not care. There is a certain relief in ritual, in knowing your lines even as the play draws to a close. He begins, as they all do, with gentle platitudes. God is merciful. Suffering brings grace. Your life has been a trial, yes, but also an example. You listen, half amused and half exhausted, as if you are being read your own obituary in advance. He asks if you are ready to confess, and you nod. There is no reason to resist. At this point, resistance feels like another small vanity long since abandoned. Confession, it turns out, is more difficult than you remember. The priest waits patiently as you summon words from the tangle of your mind. You speak of anger, of pride and envy, of the grudges you nursed so carefully they became part of your bones. You confess to hasty words, to silent hatreds, to the countless small betrayals that seemed necessary at the time. You list your failures as a mother, a wife, a queen. You keep the darkest ones to yourself. Some secrets, you suspect, even God is weary of hearing. The priest listens, face unreadable. Occasionally he nods or murmurs a prayer under his breath. You wonder if he is taking notes, if your confessions will become cautionary tales in the years to come. It is a strange thing to unburden yourself to a stranger, to trust that he will speak for you when your own voice is dust. He prompts you now and then to remember specific sins, missed masses, broken vows, times you allowed pride to rule your heart. You comply, almost grateful for the script. The details seem less important than the act itself, the ritual of admitting what everyone already knows, that you, like all the dying, are irreparably human. When at last you run out of things to say, he lifts his hand in blessing. His Latin is smooth, practiced. The words hover in the air like incense. He anoints your forehead with oil, a cool touch that surprises you, as if you had forgotten that mercy could feel like anything but suffering. He places a wafer on your tongue, and you close your eyes. The taste is thin and sweet, a memory of bread. Afterward, he stays a moment longer, making polite conversation about the saints, the weather, the hope of spring. You realize, with a pang of something like gratitude, that this is meant to comfort you, not the absolution, not the doctrine, but the simple presence of another living soul at the end of a long, lonely day. When he leaves, you are more tired than before. You had hoped foolishly for some sense of release, for a great lifting of burdens, for the sort of clarity the saints always describe. Instead, you feel only emptiness, a hollow behind your breastbone where guilt used to live. You wonder if this is what peace feels like, or simply a new kind of fatigue. Night falls again, and you lie in the gathering darkness, your mind sifting through old memories. You think of all the people you have outlived, all the voices that once filled your days and now only echo in your head. You have confessed as best you can. Whether it is enough, you cannot say. You suspect that for the dying, there is never truly enough. There is only the honest effort to face the end with whatever dignity you can muster. You are Margaret of Anjou. You have confessed your sins, not for the comfort of the living, but for the small hope that the dying too might be granted a little mercy. After confession, the room feels quieter, heavier. You lie with your hands folded on your chest, eyes open to the darkness, and let your mind drift back through the years. The priest's absolution is supposed to lift burdens, but memory has its own gravity. Now, at the edge of everything, you find yourself circling the things you have lost, not because you wish to, but because they rise from the dark, insistent, and unavoidable. You begin with Henry, your husband, the king. When you first met him, you saw only his gentleness, his guileless blue eyes, the faint tremor in his hands. He was never made for the throne's sharp edges. He wanted peace, books, long prayers at dusk. He wanted, you think now, to be left alone. But a king is never left alone, and neither is a queen. So you learned to be fierce for both of you. You bore the sharp words, the suspicion, the endless maneuvering at court. You spoke for him when he would not speak, and you suffered for it. Your marriage was not built on love, but on necessity. Still, there were moments, rare, unexpected, when you glimpsed something softer beneath the burden. You remember him reciting poetry in the garden, his voice steady only when no one else was listening. You remember his silent gratitude when you defended him in council, the way his hand would tighten on yours beneath the table. He was not a cruel man, only a weak one. In the end, that was enough to destroy both of you. You remember the night the news came. He had been captured, then released, then lost again. You remember the cold certainty that settled in your gut, the knowledge that no one could save him, not even you. His crown was wrested from his head, placed on another's brow. He was led away, gentle and bewildered, a lamb among wolves. Later, they told you he was dead, struck down in some dim corner of the tower. You tried to weep, but the tears would not come. Grief, you discovered, is sometimes just numbness. Then there is your son, Edward, the brightest, sharpest pain. You remember the first time you held him, a small, squalling thing, red-faced and furious. He was your answer to every insult, every whisper that you were barren, useless, foreign. He grew quickly, impatient with childhood, eager for swords and stories of war. You taught him to be strong because you could not imagine a world in which gentleness would keep him safe. You remember his laughter, his stubbornness, his quick temper. You remember the hope you pinned on him, the desperate prayers that he would restore what you had lost. You remember, too, the night you lost him, the battlefield at Tewkesbury, mud, blood, banners sagging in the rain. He was just a boy, but there was no room for boys in that war. They told you he was brave. They told you he fought to the last. In the years since, you have played those words over and over, searching for comfort. But the image that remains is not of a hero, but of a child cut down before his story was written. You have buried him 1,000 times in your mind, and yet he never stays buried, and the crown, the last and oldest loss. You remember the weight of it, the way it pressed down on your head, your shoulders, your spirit. You remember how quickly it was taken, how little ceremony there was in the end. No royal proclamation, no grand rebellion, Just a slow unraveling, a series of defeats, each one smaller and sadder than the last. You remember the moment you realized it was truly gone, that your name would be remembered only as a cautionary tale. The memories blur together: husband, son, crown. Sometimes you cannot tell where one ends and the next begins. Loss is like that. It seeps into every corner, coloring even the good memories with the knowledge of what came after. You remember laughter, but only as a prelude to silence. You remember love, but only as the shadow it left behind. You wonder sometimes what people will say when you are gone. Will they remember your defiance, your courage, your stubborn refusal to accept defeat? Or will they remember only your failures, your losses, your name whispered in dark corners as a warning? You have no answer. History is written by the survivors, and you are not one of them. You are Margaret of Anjou. You have lost a husband, a son, a crown. You have learned at last the weight of absence, how it bends the spine, how it hollows out the soul. Now, at the end, you find yourself holding these losses close, the only treasures left to you. They are bitter, but they are yours. There comes a point in every illness, slow or swift, royal or common, when the people around you stop speaking of recovery. It happens quietly, as most things do in a room of the dying. The hopeful platitudes dry up, replaced by awkward silences and a new, almost tender efficiency. You sense the change as surely as you sense the shifting of the seasons, the air growing colder around your bed. Your doctor still visits, but his questions are less urgent, his remedies more routine. He no longer insists on the promise of improvement, no longer tells you about miraculous recoveries from worse cases. Instead, he studies you with the thoughtful resignation of a gardener watching the last rose of autumn. He prescribes less, fusses less, and spends more time with his back to you, quietly gathering his things. When he leaves, he does not say until tomorrow. Sometimes he does not speak at all. The servants, too, have changed. There is a gentleness in the way they lift your head to change the pillow, a kind of reverence that was missing before. They have begun to move about the room as if it were a chapel, each task performed in silence, as if not to wake something better left sleeping. Some are brisk, efficient, eager to be done and away from the sick room. Others linger a little too long, as if trying to memorize your face before it becomes only a memory. You notice that people do not bring gifts anymore. No more bowls of fruit, no more posies of wildflowers, no more hopeful little tokens of a world beyond your window. The last letter from a distant cousin sits unopened on your bedside table, the wax seal still unbroken. There is no point in reading it. Whatever news it brings, it cannot reach you here, where the future is measured in heartbeats and sighs. You can see it in the eyes of your visitors, too, the way they glance at each other, at the floor, anywhere but directly at you. They are polite, yes, but their politeness is edged with discomfort. They do not ask about your health. They do not comment on your color, your appetite, your prospects. Instead, they talk around you, the weather, the coming harvest, the latest foolishness in the kitchens. It is a performance, and everyone knows their lines. You, the queen, play your part with a smile as thin as your patience. The priest visits more often now. He lingers at your side, his voice soft and steady, his prayers gentle and endless. He does not speak of miracles or redemption. He does not promise relief, only the comfort of ritual, the slow, familiar words that have soothed the dying for centuries. He presses your hand and assures you that God knows your suffering, that every tear and fever and sleepless night is counted. You believe him, not because you find comfort in the thought, but because there is nothing left to believe. There is a peculiar freedom in this new understanding. You are released from expectation, from the exhausting pretense of hope. You no longer have to perform for anyone, not even yourself. You do not have to try to eat, to force yourself to sit up, to answer questions you do not care about. The world has stopped waiting for your recovery. It is waiting patiently for your exit. You find, oddly, that you are grateful for the honesty. At last, no one demands your optimism. No one expects you to fight. You are allowed finally to surrender. You are allowed to feel tired, to let your thoughts drift, to hold your memories without shame or apology. You have been doomed for longer than anyone would admit. Now, at least, everyone agrees on the truth. Outside, life goes on. The bells ring, the markets bustle, the dogs bark at strangers in the street. All of it continues without you, as it always would. Inside, your world has narrowed to the width of your bed, the shadows on the wall, the sound of your own breathing, sometimes shallow, sometimes rattling, always there until it is not. You are Margaret of Anjou. No one expects your recovery. You are free to be as doomed as you feel, to wait for what must come without pretense, without the exhausting weight of other people's hope. You are not quite gone, but you are no longer expected to stay. There is a rhythm to dying, you discover. It is not the same as the rhythm of life, which pulsed through your days with all its urgency, its bells and calls and sudden changes. The rhythm of dying is slower, heavier, marked by a different kind of certainty. It is the pattern of the last breaths, the last aches, the final dull throb of a body that has grown tired of the struggle. Your world has become so small now. It is the distance from the edge of your bed to the cracked window, from the surface of your pillow to the jug of water beside you. Even this effort to lift your head, to swallow, to turn toward the light feels monumental. Your body is not so much your own anymore as it is an old house falling apart plank by plank, too tired to protest as the wind howls through its seams. Your cough has grown softer, but it comes from deeper within you. Each fit leaves you weaker, breathless, clutching at the sheets for stability that never arrives. Sometimes you manage to catch your breath and rest, drifting in and out of a sleep so light that the sound of your own heart wakes you. Other times, sleep eludes you entirely, and you lie awake through the long, slow hours of the night, counting the spaces between each ragged inhale. Eating is an afterthought now. Your appetite abandoned you days ago, perhaps weeks. The servants still bring broth, gently steaming, but it cools beside you, untouched. The thought of swallowing even a spoonful is overwhelming. Sometimes you force yourself to drink a little water, just to keep up appearances, to give them something to do. You smile weakly when they praise you for trying. It is the smallest rebellion left to you. You feel yourself becoming less substantial, not just your body, but your mind. Thoughts drift through your head like mist, dissolving before you can hold on to them. Names, faces, places, they come and go, indistinct and insistent. You try to recall details, the feel of your son's hand, the scent of the old rose garden at court, the voice of your mother singing as dusk settled on your childhood home. But memory is fickle now, offering fragments and then whisking them away before you can be sure they were ever real. Sometimes, when the pain ebbs, you feel almost peaceful. The world outside your window is greening with the promise of spring or paling beneath autumn's chill. Life continues, merchants shouting, children laughing, bells ringing to mark the hour. These sounds are muffled now, distant, as if you are listening from underwater. You no longer feel envy. The world belongs to the living. You are content, almost, to watch it go on without you. There are moments of fear, of course. Late at night, as the candle burns low, you remember stories of death, the cold hand, the weight on the chest, the long final sleep. You wonder if it will be quick or slow. Will you know it when it comes, or will you simply slip away, unnoticed even by yourself? You whisper a prayer, half remembered, to any saint who might still be listening. There is a certain relief in not knowing. Your visitors have dwindled to only the most faithful, your priest, your nurse, the few who have not already begun mourning you from a comfortable distance. They tend to you gently, with the careful touch reserved for the very young and the nearly departed. You hear their soft voices outside your door, their footsteps slow and measured. They bring comfort in small things, a clean cloth, a whispered story, a hand resting lightly on yours. Even these small kindnesses tire you. You find yourself longing for quiet, for the darkness that falls across your bed in the late afternoon. Your body is too heavy to move, your eyes too tired to stay open. The light hurts sometimes. You close your eyes and listen to the sound of your own breathing, the final music of your long and complicated life. And in these last days, you stop pretending to be anyone but yourself. Not a queen, not a wife, not a mother or a rival or a rumor, just Margaret, sick, failing, waiting. The world has grown very small, and you have grown very tired. Your hands, once strong and sure, rest useless on the blankets. Your thoughts flutter and settle, then float away again. You are Margaret of Anjou. Death is near now, closer than the next dawn, more intimate than the touch of a nurse's hand. You meet it with neither courage nor fear, but with the weary, quiet acceptance of someone who has carried too many burdens for too long. The rhythm of dying is almost finished. There are only a few more measures left to play. In these last quiet days, with the world narrowed to a rectangle of light on the stone floor and the thin, persistent ache in your chest, you find that your mind, so long dulled by pain and routine, sharpens in unexpected ways. It is as though your approaching end has swept aside the cobwebs, leaving certain truths exposed and raw, like nerves. Regret is an old companion, of course. It has paced the corridors of your mind for years, wearing a path between what was and what might have been. But now, in the hush before the final darkness, regret shifts, grows urgent. You are startled by sudden memories, as crisp and merciless as the chill before dawn. They are not always the obvious ones, not the great losses or the famous mistakes, but small things, sharp and inescapable. You remember suddenly a morning long ago at court, sunlight pouring through the high windows, your son Edward running to you with a wildflower clutched in his fist. You were busy, lost in talk of war and alliances, and you brushed him aside, promising to look at his prize later. You never did. It was a moment, nothing more, lost in a river of moments, but now it glows painfully bright in your memory. How many other moments did you miss? How much love did you leave unspoken, too busy with crowns and battles and the endless struggle to survive? Another regret, the words you hurled at your husband, Henry, not in anger, but in exhaustion, when he could not or would not meet your eyes. You wanted him to be strong, to be kingly, to shield you from the world. You see now that he was never meant for such burdens, and your own harshness only drove him further into himself. The realization is bitter, but strangely freeing. No one is built for every role, not even queens. You think of your enemies, the ones you outlasted, and the ones who outlasted you. You spent so many years measuring yourself against them, building defenses, gathering grudges like armor. In the end, you see, most of them were as frightened and lonely as you. You wonder what might have happened if you had offered an outstretched hand instead of a closed fist. The thought is almost laughable. Almost. There are regrets larger than any one moment, regrets you carry in the shape of your whole life. The hunger for power, the endless need to prove yourself, to the court, to your rivals, to your own doubtful heart. You see now that the world was always indifferent, rolling forward, no matter who wore the crown or who wept in the shadows. You regret the hours spent scheming, the friendships sacrificed on the altar of ambition. You regret believing, for so long, that survival required hardness above all else. Yet, even as these regrets crowd in, there are realizations that feel, for a moment, like grace. You realize that you were never meant to be perfect, no more than anyone else who trudged through the mud and splendor of these centuries. You did what you thought you must, given the choices and the threats and the small private terrors that shaped your days. You realize that the world is not kind, but it is sometimes beautiful, even to the dying. You remember laughter, your own, wild and unguarded, echoing off castle walls when you were young and foolish and full of plans. You remember the smell of new bread, the comfort of music, the surprising delight of a poem recited just for you. You remember the faces of friends and lovers, moments of peace amid the chaos. For the first time in years, you allow yourself to feel gratitude, sharp, bright, uncomplicated gratitude for having lived at all, however messily. Still, the regrets return. They are as persistent as the pain in your chest. You regret, most of all, that you cannot go, cannot repair the little hurts, cannot gather your son in your arms, or speak a gentler word to your husband. You regret not holding your own heart more tenderly, but there is nothing to be done. The past is as unreachable as the world outside your window, and you are too tired for anything but honesty. You try, as the candle burns low, to make peace with your story. It is not a grand one in the end. It is not the story you would have chosen, but it is yours, and the regrets are part of it, woven through every triumph and defeat. Perhaps that is the closest anyone gets to forgiveness, a quiet acceptance of the whole tangled thread. You are Margaret of Anjou. You see your life now as it was, bright, brutal, unfinished. You regret, you realize, but you do not beg for more time. What remains is yours, even the sorrow, even the clarity that came too late. You are almost ready. Night falls like a curtain, thick and final, across your little chamber. The day ebbs away without fuss or fanfare, as if the world itself is weary. You watch the last of the sunlight shrink to a thread on the far wall, then vanish altogether, leaving you in a room shaped by flickering candlelight and deep, expectant shadows. You have grown intimate with night in this place. Its rituals are as familiar as those of any court. Candles snuffed, windows closed against the chill, the hush that settles over the house like dust. The servants move quietly, tucking blankets, smoothing your hair, pressing cool cloths to your forehead. Their faces are drawn and gentle. They do not linger any longer than duty demands. The night belongs to you and your fading breath. You listen to the sounds that remain, the soft drip of water from a leaky roof, the distant thump of shutters rattling in the wind, the scurry of mice searching for crumbs. Once you would have raged at such indignities. A queen should not share her last hours with vermin and drafts. Now, you accept them as part of the landscape, no more significant than the ache in your bones or the slow, shallow rhythm of your lungs. You lie still, gathering your remaining strength. Your body is a borderland now, one foot in the living world, the other already testing the chill of whatever comes next. There is a heaviness pressing down on you, a quieting of the senses. It is not peace, exactly, but something like resignation. The cough that tormented you for so long has faded into silence. The pain in your joints is distant, muffled. Even the fever, so relentless, seems to have forgotten you. In the thick of this final night, your mind drifts. You revisit rooms and faces, conversations you thought you had forgotten. You see your son's first steps, your husband's shy smile, the crowded halls of your brief glory. You see the hands of your enemies, grasping and greedy, and your own hands, sometimes clasped in prayer, sometimes clenched in anger. The parade of memory is slower now, less cruel, as if even your regrets have grown tired. You find yourself listening for familiar voices, your mother, your child, the friends you lost to war, exile, or old age. The silence answers you. You are alone, and the night is endless. You do not call out. What would you say if someone were to answer? All the important words have already been spoken, or lost, or left unspoken by choice or necessity. A part of you wonders if this is death, this silence, this stopping of the world. You remember old stories, how the dying see lights, hear music, feel the presence of angels. You experience none of these things. There is only quiet and the slow awareness that nothing more is required of you. No decisions, no displays of strength, no final performances for those who remain. You are simply here, waiting, as the hours lengthen and the candle shortens. Your breathing becomes the only measure of time. In, out, a pause, in, out. Each breath feels like a question to which you already know the answer. You wonder, abstractly, how much longer your body will remember to keep going when your mind has ceased to care. You do not fear the answer. Fear is for the living, and you are almost beyond its reach. The darkness in the room grows deeper, heavier. You lose track of the objects around you, the pitcher, the rosary, the stack of letters no one will read. All you see is a field of shadows, vast and quiet. It is strangely comforting, this erasure of the world's hard edges. The need to be anyone, queen, wife, mother, slips away. There is only you and the slow, final undoing of a life. Sometimes you think you hear music, a far-off tune, simple and wordless. You decide it is just the wind through the cracks in the wall, but you listen anyway, grateful for the company. Sometimes you think you see a glimmer of light beyond the door, and you almost call out, but the effort is too great. The darkness holds you, gentle and absolute. The servants come one last time. They check your pulse, brush the hair from your forehead, murmur soft encouragements they no longer believe. You meet their eyes, and for a moment you see something like kindness, or perhaps relief. You want to thank them, but the words do not come. You let your eyes close, and the room recedes, smaller and smaller, until there is nothing left but the sound of your heart, slow and steady. Then slower still, you are Margaret of Anjou. Night has fallen, and the world stops, just for you, just this once. For the first time in many years, you are free from the burden of being seen, from the ache of memory, from the noise and weight of history. The rest is silence. Morning arrives quietly, as mornings always do. The world beyond your window resumes its slow, indifferent routines. The street vendors set up their stalls. The dogs begin their quarrels over scraps. The bells in the distant chapel toll out the hour. The first rays of light slip over the rooftops, poke through the tiny pane of glass, and settle on your motionless form. You do not notice. Your eyes are half open, fixed on a point above the ceiling, unblinking and calm. Your mouth is slack, your lips parted as if to form a last, unfinished word. The blanket is pulled to your chin, your hands resting like two weary birds upon your chest. If anyone looked quickly, they might think you were sleeping, finally at peace, wrapped in the fragile embrace of early light. But you are not asleep, and you are not at peace, not really. The fever has fled, but it took you with it. The ache in your joints, the persistent cough, the gnawing hunger and regret, all of it has drained away in the night, leaving only the stillness, so complete that it feels almost staged. You are gone, and only your body remains to greet the sun. It is the servant who finds you, the same girl who has tiptoed through your mornings for months, bringing water and stale bread, straightening your pillows, avoiding your eyes when the cough was at its worst. Day she pauses in the doorway, tray in hand, sensing before she knows. The room feels different, heavier. She calls your name, softly at first, then again, louder. Margaret, Majesty, nothing stirs. She approaches, sets the tray down, and stands in the thin shaft of sunlight, not daring to touch you just yet. Your face, so drawn and lined in recent weeks, has relaxed into something almost unfamiliar. The furrow between your brows has smoothed, the tension in your jaw undone. You look, she thinks, in the breathless moment before the shock, almost like yourself again, the portrait of a woman who once ruled and loved and lost. The news spreads quietly, as all important news does at first. The nurse comes, followed by the doctor, both moving with the solemn professionalism of those who have witnessed many endings. They check for breath, for pulse, for any sign that the night has not taken everything. Satisfied, they cross themselves, close your eyes, and pull the sheet up to cover your face. For a moment, the room is filled with the hushed reverence of a church before the funeral. Outside your door, the household stirs. There is a flurry of movement, soft shoes hurrying on stone floors, whispered instructions, the fetching of the priest. Some weep quietly, as much out of duty as grief. Others steal a glance into your room, eager to confirm the rumor before it becomes official. In kitchens and corridors, your name is spoken for the last time as something living, soon to become memory, then legend, then barely a footnote. The priest arrives, his hands gentle as he prepares the rites. He anoints your forehead with oil, speaks the words meant to carry your soul beyond the reach of pain and history. He prays for mercy, for rest, for peace. You hear none of it. The rituals are for the living. a salve against the sharpness of loss. The servants lay out your body, dress you in clean linen, smooth your hair as best they can. A few brave the chill to open the window, letting in a breeze that lifts the stale air, carrying with it the scent of earth, of new morning. No crowds gather at your door. There is no public mourning, no parade of dignitaries. The world you once commanded has already moved on. The king in London will receive word eventually. The nobles in France may pause to remember. Most will not. For them, your death is a convenient ending, a footnote, a small stone thrown into a river already rushing with other stories. Still, for a few, the moment is sharp. The nurse who whispered prayers at your bedside, the servant who brought you news of the outside world, the priest who held your hand in the darkness, they linger a little longer, marking the passing of the woman who was once their queen, their charge, their last daily duty. The morning moves forward. The bed is stripped, the room prepared for its next occupant. Your presence, so heavy in the night, begins to dissolve. There are tasks to be done, letters to write, possessions to sort, small tokens to be distributed or discarded. Life flows back into the house, carrying away the last traces of your long, slow decline. You are Margaret of Anjou. You do not wake. The sun rises, the world turns, and you, at last, are beyond its reach. Your body, now empty of the burdens it carried for 52 years, becomes at last an object to be managed. The process is almost comically practical. Hands that once bowed to your commands now set about their last duty, stripping the bed, washing your limbs, straightening your bones for the coming audience. The nurse who tended your fevers closes your eyes with a practiced touch. The servants cross themselves, mutter short prayers, and then return to their cleaning, eager to finish before the next call of the bell. The rituals of death are as ancient and automatic as the rituals of birth. Water is heated, linen laid out, candles lit in the corners of the room. A procession forms, small, private, but methodical. Your hair, thinned and gray, is brushed until it shines. Your hands, knotted and swollen with years of regret, are folded over your chest. The sheet is drawn up to your chin, hiding the sharp lines that illness left behind. There is little ceremony, no grand farewell. A priest offers the final rites, reading from a book so old and worn that the words might as well be written in dust. For the first time in your life, you are free from the scrutiny of courtiers, the ambitions of rivals, the gaze of history. Now, there are only the whispers of the living and the slow, persistent decay of memory. Beyond your door, the household moves on. There is a list to be written, possessions tallied, debts considered, letters dispatched to distant relatives who will murmur their condolences, and then, with equal swiftness, return to their own affairs. In the village, a rumor travels, quiet at first, then growing as it passes from house to house. The mad queen is dead. Some say you died raving, others that you passed in peace, finally released from your long suffering. Each retelling grows less precise, more embroidered. Soon, no one remembers quite where the truth ends and the story begins. For a few days, your absence is noted in small ways. The servants move more freely. The physician stops visiting. The sick room is aired out with bundles of lavender and rosemary. Your name lingers in the air, fading each time it is spoken. The world, as it always does, fills in the space you leave behind. There are chores to be done, new tenants to be assigned, fresh sheets for the next patient or prisoner or forgotten relative. Somewhere in a musty record book, a scribe enters your death in careful script. Margaret of Anjou, former Queen of England, died in the year of our Lord 1482. There will be no elaborate funeral, no grand processions. The years have made you inconvenient, irrelevant, a loose thread in a tapestry that no one cares to mend. The few who remember you do so with the hesitation of people recalling a half forgotten dream, a mixture of pity, relief, and a little curiosity. Your enemies feel no triumph. Your friends, if any remain, feel only the dull ache of having outlived another page of their own story. You are carried quietly to your final resting place. There are no crowds, only a handful of servants and clergy. The priest mutters his prayers. The earth is turned, and you are lowered into the darkness. For a brief moment, the world pauses, just long enough for the last clump of dirt to fall, for the last whispered memory to echo in the air. Above your grave, grass will grow, the stone will weather. The stories told of you, queen, mother, widow, exile, will shift and fade, rewritten by those who find comfort in the neatness of endings. Some will blame you for wars, others will call you tragic, a woman destroyed by forces beyond her control. Most will not think of you at all. The centuries are hungry. They devour even the best laid legends. Still, for a time, your death stirs small ripples. The neighbors gossip. Did you die cursing or praying? Did you regret your battles or your marriage, or simply being born in such an age? A few say they saw lights at your window on the last night, a sign or an omen, depending on what story needs telling. The city, though, moves on. There are new queens, new wars, new rumors to chase. Soon your room is scrubbed, the sheets changed, your few remaining possessions divided or discarded. Life, ever indifferent, resumes its slow, relentless business. The world forgets quickly, and so do the living. Your absence becomes ordinary. Even your name becomes a footnote, another stone in a graveyard of forgotten monarchs. You are Margaret of Anjou, once queen, then exile, then patient, then corpse. Now, at last, nothing at all. The earth closes over you, the air clears, and history turns the page as if you were never here at all.